Have you ever noticed that sometimes your baby laughs so hard they can barely catch their breath just because you made a funny little sound, a silly face, a quick peekaboo, or some completely random noise that somehow makes them laugh like it's the funniest thing they've ever experienced? And the strange part is, most adults wouldn't find it funny at all. But to a baby, it's absolutely hilarious. So, what's actually happening inside their brain in that moment? Because they may not be laughing for the reason you think. In fact, those big laughs can reveal how your baby's brain is learning to understand the world, predict what comes next, and even build connections with the people they love most. And once you understand what's really happening behind those giggles, you may never look at these little moments the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because the explanation is far more fascinating than it seems. When a baby bursts into laughter, the explanation seems obvious. They thought it was funny. And of course, that's true. But it creates a much more interesting question. Why was it funny to them? Because if we're honest, many of the things that make babies laugh don't really seem like jokes. A strange sound, a funny face, a tiny surprise, something repeated over and over. And here's the detail that changes everything. Many times, babies aren't reacting to humor itself. They're reacting to a discovery. Because for a brain that is still learning how the world works, noticing something unexpected can be even more exciting than a joke. And that leads us to the real reason behind those big laughs. There's one word that explains a huge part of these giggles: surprise. But not just any surprise, a safe surprise. The human brain is constantly trying to predict what will happen next. Adults do it all the time without even realizing it. Babies do it too. The difference is that they're still learning how the world works. So when something unexpected happens, a funny sound, a strange facial expression, or a sudden change that doesn't feel threatening, the brain receives a very interesting piece of information. The prediction was wrong, but everything is still safe. And that's exactly what makes the experience so fascinating. Something unexpected happened, and everything turned out okay. That may be why such simple things can trigger such huge reactions, because what looks like a silly little game to an adult may feel like a small but exciting discovery to a baby's brain. And that discovery helps explain something every parent has noticed at some point. If surprise is so important, one question immediately comes up. Then why do babies keep laughing at the same game over and over again? Because something very interesting happens after that first surprise. The brain begins to recognize a pattern, and suddenly, the game is no longer just unexpected. It becomes predictable. But contrary to what many adults assume, that doesn't reduce the enjoyment. In fact, it can increase it, because every repetition gives the brain a chance to test an expectation and discover that it was right. And few things are as satisfying to a developing brain as realizing that the world is starting to make sense. That may be why some babies never seem to get tired of the same game. While adults see repetition, the brain sees learning. And that reveals something even more important about what's really happening behind those big laughs. And this is where we arrive at a fascinating discovery. Maybe your baby's brain isn't searching for entertainment. Maybe it's searching for understanding. Because the first years of life are an endless stream of new experiences. Everything is new. Everything is unfamiliar. Everything has to be figured out. So, when a game creates a pattern that can be anticipated, something special happens. For a few seconds, the world becomes a little less unpredictable, and the brain can finally see what comes next. That feeling of predictability is incredibly powerful, because it helps babies build trust in their environment, in the people around them, and even in their own expectations. And that may be exactly why those laughs can be so intense. Not because the sound was unbelievably funny, but because the brain just confirmed that it understood a tiny piece of the world correctly. And there's an even more surprising consequence of that discovery, because it helps explain why these playful moments strengthen far more than a baby's sense of humor. And this is the part that surprises many parents. Because if the laughter were only about the sound or the game, anyone could get the same reaction. But that's not what happens. The biggest laughs usually happen with the people who make the baby feel safest: parents, grandparents, siblings, the people who are part of their everyday world. And that reveals something very important. Many times, babies aren't reacting only to the game itself. They're reacting to the experience of sharing that moment with you. Because long before words exist, the brain is already learning something fundamental: connection. That may be why some babies look directly at their parents right before they start laughing, or why they seem to wait for the game to happen again, as if they're saying, "Let's do that one more time." And in a way, that's exactly what's happening. The fun isn't taking place only inside the baby. It's happening between the two of you. And that may be exactly why such simple moments often become some of the most treasured memories of childhood. And when you put everything we've talked about together, something starts to become clear. Maybe those big laughs were never just about having fun. They're a sign that the brain is learning to recognize patterns, to predict what comes next, to discover when something is surprising but still safe, and to better understand the people who make up its world. Suddenly that silly face is no longer just a silly face. That little boo is no longer just a funny sound, and that game you've played 100 times no longer seems meaningless, because behind every burst of laughter, the brain is practicing skills that will be used for the rest of life. Skills connected to learning, trust, connection, and understanding the world. And maybe that's why these moments are so captivating to watch. Because while adults see a baby having fun, something much bigger may be happening behind the scenes. Maybe the biggest mistake is assuming that babies laugh for the same reasons adults do. Because many times, they're not reacting to humor. They're reacting to discovery, to surprise, to predictability, and to connection. That's what makes those laughs so special, because they offer a rare glimpse into something we normally can't see. A brain learning, growing, and building relationships all at the same time. And maybe that's exactly why these moments stay with us for years, because deep down, we can sense that something extraordinary is happening, even if we don't yet have the words to explain it. And there's something even more fascinating than your baby's laughter, because while many parents look for signs of love in words, babies show love long before they can speak. In fact, some of the strongest signs are happening every single day without parents even realizing it. A look, a specific reaction, a quiet search for your presence, simple behaviors that seem ordinary but may reveal something much deeper. So click on the video that's appearing on your screen. There, you'll discover the 7 hidden signs that your baby is saying "I love you" without using a single word, and why some of the smallest moments can reveal a connection far deeper than most parents ever imagine. I'll see you there.